This is Charlie Gilkey from Productive Flourishing. Today we're going to talk about stories. And I got 3 questions for you. First question, what story drives your action? Second, is that story supportive for you? And third, is it time to change the story? Okay, so let me give some more background to this. I've learned with working with people, really, that we have to focus on things in this order. Story, strategy, plan, actions, right? Most people want to know what to do and how to do it. And that's over here in the action step. Just give me the 7-step secret. Give me blah, 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 right? They want the actions, and I understand that. Where most of the work comes, though, is in their story. Comes over here on this side. Because as we work on businesses, as we work on careers, as we work on the stuff that matters, there's an external story that we tell about what's going on. And that external story might be what we call our we might call it our vision, or we might call it our mission, or we might call it our brand. But that's the external story that we're telling the world. Now, what actually drives our action most of the time is the internal story. What we tell ourselves about who we are and what we're doing. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. A lot of times the internal story does not support us doing what we want to do in the world. For instance, I have a newer client who has a story about wealth that we're having to work through. She comes from a community that has very deep and antipathic views about wealth that she's struggling with because she doesn't agree with those views, but here she is. And, as we start talking about growing a business and getting out there in the world, we're having to confront those. Which story about wealth is going to be the one that she lets drive herself through her adult life? Is it the one that she inherited from her society and from her, upbringing? Or is it the one that she's going to take and go forward with now? Now, that's just an example. I've got other examples of people who never received feedback for anything that they did throughout their life, so it created an overachiever complex. Everything they do, they have to do it well above the top because that's the only way there might be some positive applause or feedback. And it's not working for them because everything they do has to be so incredibly hard, and they're missing the easy and or simple ways in which they could serve others and be served themselves. Now, they don't necessarily have to be bad stories, right? There are successful people who have stories that create successful outcomes for them. For instance, successful people know that momentary failures are just that. That's not what you should focus on. And so they can accrue a lot of momentary failures and see the big win as the important piece, not all the little failures. Many people can't do that. Many people haven't learned to do that because we focus on failure and weaknesses versus strengths and, big opportunities that we created. There are other stories around receiving help, for instance, that nourish some people and keep other people from doing great work in the world. For instance, I've got one of those. I grew up where asking for help meant that you were defective, and it meant that you would owe someone. And you only asked for help if you really needed to. Like you tried everything possible before you asked for help. And there's a whole story around asking for help, and I know where I got that from. Turns out that's not a very useful perspective right now, right? That's not a very useful story about receiving help. The story that actually is important and that is useful is the one around letting other people celebrate and contribute to your success, and that being a strength, because in certain places and certain times it is an incredible strength to be able to have those people rally and fuel you, rather than seeing every time that someone does something for you, it's like, oh, that's a debt. I couldn't do it myself. All those stories, right? So the thing about it is, we can change these stories. I'll link to some posts in here and that just show you, if you have the view that you're just a box of damaged goods, you're always going to be fighting against that, right? Any success that comes along the way will be viewed in that light. If you think that you're a robot, or you view yourself as a robot, or you view yourself as somebody who doesn't matter, that's always going to be something you have to fight against. So when we change those stories to be ones that are nurturing and supportive and motivating, and see that those stories are true of the world, that's the last piece, right? You can create stories that become true of the world through habits and practice and through the communities that you build. So it's not just that you're lying, you're just changing the way that you understand the same set of data, which we're all able to do. So I'm going to pull it back. Stories drive us. Action plans, strategies, none of that really does, right? That doesn't do the work. That just shows us how to do the work we already want to do, or how to play out the story that we already have. So, what story drives your action? Is it supportive and nourishing for you? And third, does it need to be changed? All right, food for thought. Thanks for bearing with me. A little bit longer video than what web trends tell us to do, but screw it. We got something to talk about here. Take it easy, guys, and I'll see you soon.